Marie, will you advance the slides, please? So I am very pleased to introduce Dr. Sylvia Whitlock. She's the first female club president in Rotary back in 1989. And she's going to tell us a little bit about her history. And she was also served as district governor in 2012, 2013. Next one. Dr. Whitlock is going to be talking about Edge of Tomorrow. And I just wanted to let you know, she was born in New York. She went through high school in Jamaica, Kingston, Jamaica. And then she just has a whole wealth of education there. So we are very pleased that she is here and will share her knowledge with us. Next one, Marie. She joined the ex-Rotary Club of Duarte in 1982, and she'll talk to us about that. As I mentioned, she was the first woman club president worldwide in Rotary International. She's done a lot of travel in her time, and you can see that she's made up at a lot of different clubs that it would be great to do that. We usually make up with more of the local ones. She was the recipient of the Rotary Foundation District Service Award, recognized as the Global Citizen Award from the United Nations in 2013. And she was also recognized as the NCAA Woman of the Year. So it is my pleasure to introduce you all to Dr. Sylvia Whitlock. And we are ready for your presentation, madam.
Good morning. It's nice to be here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So the title of my talk is Edge of Tomorrow, and you know what? Tomorrow looks different now than it did when I gave it that title. When I gave it that title, the tomorrow I was talking about was a tomorrow when we wouldn't have polio in the world anymore. Now we're looking at not having polio, but also not having the coronavirus. We're hoping that will be gone pretty soon. Polio, by the way, is only endemic. Today I got a polio report, and of course there are only two places where we still have polio. That's Afghanistan and Pakistan, but it's on the decline. So it's a lot different than it looked years ago when I came into Rotary. We were just starting Polio Plus. And 1987 was the year of the Supreme Court decision. 1989 was the year that the Council on Legislation approved that change so that women throughout the world could belong to Rotary. So, some people wonder, when I talk to this group, there was a time when women couldn't be Rotarians. Oh my God, especially for young people today, that's hard for them to understand. Yes, there was a time. And I was a principal in the Duarte Unified School District, and the president of the Rotary Club was our superintendent. And as most principals do, we worry about how parents and their kids are going to fare in a community, how much connection you have, and so on. And I remember talking to Dr. Key, Richard Key, about this, and he said, "Oh, don't worry about it. We're going to fix this up because we're going to get you in Rotary, and that will take care of everything that you need to know." Well, Rotary, I thought, Rotary? What is Rotary? How many people have asked that question? What is Rotary? I didn't know what Rotary was. I mean, I knew about Kiwanis. I tell a lot of people that joke. I like to tell that joke. Kiwanian told me, you know what Kiwanis means? It means waiting to get into Rotary. We have some people who belong to Kiwanis and Rotary. We do a lot of work with our Kiwanis Club. We work together. Anyhow, I was invited along with another principal, a journalist and psychologist, to join the Rotary Club of Duarte. I knew about the Kiwanis. I knew about Lions because I was a school person, and they provide eyeglasses for people in school. I knew about Elks because I used to live in New York, and you can't walk down 42nd Street without seeing Elks with all their gorgeous hats. You know, you say, who are those people? And somebody says, oh, they're Elks. And you say, oh, Elks, right. And you know, keep going. But I had literally never heard about Rotary, you know, and that's not an uncommon occurrence. So I'll tell you a little bit about the legal wrangling and some of the funnier and more interesting experiences, maybe some of them not so funny. So Duarte is a little bedroom community in the San Gabriel Valley. It's home to the City of Hope Hospital, that's that huge, well-known cancer hospital. And of course, the Duarte Unified School District was the other big business in that community. But it was a small club, struggling as we all do to raise membership. And I want you to remember that, because membership was the issue for us. Membership was the issue for us. That's why the women were invited, because they were there. Richard Key looked around the district and he said, you know, look at all these manager types. And way back in the 70s, they were all manager types in Rotary. And he said, principal, reporter, psychologist, all of these, perfect for rounding out our Rotary classification. So he thought, why don't I invite these women to join Rotary? He called the district governor and he confided his plan to him. I won't mention his name because he didn't pass the four-way test. But he said, hey, go ahead, Richard. When you send their names in to headquarters, just use their initials. He didn't want anybody to know they were women. See, now that was designed to deceive. It was not the truth. Did not pass the four-way test. Anyhow, Richard did. And of course, the action was not without its dissenters. We had one person in one member of the club who was so against the move that he resigned, and it immediately left our classification for undertaker open. Well, he was able to see the death of the club. However, the women entered wholeheartedly into the spirit and the work of Rotary. They held yard sales, they made snow cones for the city picnic, breakfast with the Easter Bunny, breakfast with Santa Claus. We still do those things. Thanksgiving baskets for needy families, dinner for cancer survivors, and the things that Rotary people do in our small community. But they also got busy planning their first event, which was the 25th anniversary of the club. And the celebration was set, everything was in place, and the international representatives arrived. You know, Rotary always sends representatives to help clubs celebrate their milestones. So at the festivities, the Duarte women were introduced, to the palpable consternation of the representatives. The buzz was obvious. Women? We don't have women in Rotary. Somebody said, this club does. Well, the representatives returned to Evanston after the party was over. They didn't leave the party. They stayed for the rest of the party. And they reported, can you imagine there are women in the Duarte Club? Well, headquarters didn't lose any time in notifying Duarte that, number one, women were not allowed in Rotary. Number two, the women needed to be asked to leave. And number three, if they did not leave, the club could not call itself a Rotary Club. The club took a vote and decided it would not ask the women to leave. Instead, it asked to appeal to the board of directors, and it was told only real Rotary clubs can appeal to the board of directors. And if there are women in this club, you cannot speak to the board. Well, and of course, the club decided it would appeal to the Council on Legislation, which was meeting that year in Tokyo. It was an interesting situation, however, because when the issue came up, it was not whether women should be permitted to be members of Rotary, but it was whether the Rotary Club of Duarte had violated Rotary bylaws by inviting the women as members. And of course we have. The answer was clear. You know, the die was cast. The vote against having the club retain its women was 1,000 to 34. Imagine, there were 34 people who were sympathetic to the issue, 34 delegates at the Council on Legislation. And I met one of them when the convention was in Calgary. I was on a train going downtown to the meeting, and I was sitting across from a man and his wife, and they were all in Rotary regalia, you know, the name tags. Everybody reads the name tags. And he was reading my name tag. And he said, "Are you from the club that got women in Rotary?" And I said, "Yes, they are." I sat up, I'm really excited. And he said, "You know, I was at the Council on Legislation, and I voted to have women in Rotary." Of course, that wasn't the issue, but that's what he voted for. To have women in Rotary, he said, "because I always thought they should be there." And his wife, who was quietly sitting there, said, "I didn't think so then, and I don't think so now." And I said, "Why?" And she said, "Because, you know, we have our men, our husbands are going out to meetings at night, and we don't want them meeting with women." And I thought, you know, it's not a social club, it's a service club. Well, she wasn't interested in that distinction. But of course, when the Council of Legislation heard our issue, it was not the first time they had heard the issue on women in Rotary. Here's a little known bit of information. In the 50s, I like those elephants that were behind me. In Detroit, in the 1950s, a club in India India of all places, had put an item on the agenda to change the bylaws about women. And of course it was defeated. The council just kind of poo-pooed it and they went away. They didn't press it. And even more interesting, the first Rotary Constitution did not specify that Rotarians had to be men, just persons of good character. But that was a time when there were few women in the workaday world. And because men were the ones engaging in business and fellowship activities, the bylaws kind of just evolved. They just morphed into men of good character. If I could ask Paul Harris a question today, it would be, would you have intentionally excluded women from Rotary? I went into the Paul Harris exhibit in Evanston, and with this larger-than-life image of Paul Harris, and I said, "Would you have excluded women?" And he didn't say a word. Well, Jack Davis, who was president of Rotary International at the time, said, "The unity of Rotary International was jeopardized by the unilateral move of the Rotary Club." Wrong? Well, their charter now removed, this was what we did to remain. We put an X, see if I can find the pin and show you. We put an X over the Rotary icon, and we renamed ourselves the ex-Rotary Club of Duarte. Can you see it? And we remained the ex-Rotary Club of Duarte for 11 years. Count them, 11 years. And I thought, now whoever was making the decisions at Rotary International, did they have kids who were maybe a son or a daughter, maybe 10 or 11 years old? By the time this was settled, those kids were 20, 21 years old. And for all those years, were they not concerned about the kind of world in which their kids were growing up that was accepting men and women without distinction between genders? I have never been able to talk to anyone there who was there, who could explain to me what the thinking was, why all that was done. Well, we became the ex-Rotary Club of Duarte, and we just continued to do what Rotarians do in the district, except we were not involved with Rotary International in any international projects. However, a Rotarian attorney from a neighboring club, from the Arcadia Club, Sanford Smith, offered us his help in taking our case to the court. Now remember what I said in the beginning. We were interested in increasing membership in the club. And we didn't think that an organization that was concerned about service and people to do service would be able to prevail in the courts. So we didn't spend a lot of time preparing this case. Sanford, but we told Rotary we were going to take it to the courts, and they petitioned because we were going to take it to California, of course. They petitioned that it be heard in federal court. And the reason for that was that a New York club had a case in federal court. It was a precedent. A New York club had been seeking exclusionary rights for private club membership. And the federal court was friendly to that case. Well, the federal court this time ruled that the case be heard in California. So it was first heard by the California Superior Court, which upheld Rotary's right to expel the club. And so Duarte, with the help of the ACLU, the Seattle Five, another club that was trying to get women in Rotary, and they filed an amicus brief. We appealed to the California Appellate Court. But we knew then that this was going to be an issue. And so Sanford started doing some research on women in the service clubs and this kind of discrimination. And what Sanford found out was that in California, as in probably many places, maybe even in your state, there are laws that prevent discrimination in public accommodations, railroads, telephone business, that sort of thing. And of course, at that time, probably 80% of the members of Rotary had their dues paid by their employers because of what it afforded them. Well, Sanford went using the Unruh Act, in our state it's the Unruh Act, and we appealed to the California Appellate Court, and that club reversed the ruling of the Superior Court. So here we are with a win in California. And Rotary appealed, or tried to appeal, to the California Supreme Court. But that court refused to hear the case, which essentially was affirming the decision of the appellate court. Well, the decision now is incumbent on all California clubs, but only California. And so we moved on. However, this is where it gets kind of funny, and we have to relax in this. Before women, things changed very slowly in Rotary. This was the year in which I was a president-elect, and I was invited to attend Pets. Well, the district had its stock of postcards, and why should it change them because now they're inviting a woman? I got the usual postcard that said time, date of the Pets meeting, and it reminded me, please bring your coat and tie because director pictures will be taken. What could I do? I took my coat and tie. Well, at that meeting, in my coat and tie, I was the only woman with 290 men. They didn't even have a female speaker, 290 men. But you know what was nice about that promotion? During restroom breaks, guess what it looked like? Long lines outside the men's restroom. And I could sashay past. Now remember, hey, this was 30 years ago. I could still sashay. I could just sashay past into the ladies' restroom. Not even one female speaker, but most of the men were cordial, friendly, and very respectful and very curious about how we had gotten this far. So at the section on Rotary International, I heard our incoming governor discuss the case and tell us that Rotary International will appeal to the United States Supreme Court, and we have every reason to believe we will win. I couldn't believe I was hearing it. I was a school teacher, a school principal. I knew about Roe versus Wade. I knew about the Board of Education Topeka, Kansas. There was a worthwhile Supreme Court issues. But what I was not really smart about was the fact that this was a civil rights issue. Here I am still looking at it as a membership. It was a civil rights issue, and it had every reason to be accepted by the Supreme Court. Well, he referred to the small size of our club. He said, it's just the case of the mouse that roared. Let me see if I find my mouse and show you. Doesn't we have a mouse? We have a mouse that has a Rotary icon on his back. That's the mouse that roared. So I made notes. I went back to my district, we made a new banner called Rotary Club of Duarte, the ex-Rotary Club of Duarte, the mouse that roared. And we continue to do everything that Rotary clubs do. And my private opinion was that it wasn't important enough to be heard, but RI did appeal, because as one of their attorneys so commonly put it, they're forcing us to take everyone in, just like a motel. Hey, its argument was that their ruling violated their First Amendment's right of association. The Supreme Court did take the case, and on May the 4th, 1987, the court found that considering the size, purpose, selectivity, and exclusivity of Rotary's membership, the relationship among the club's members was not of the intimate or private variety which warrants First Amendment protection. And so, writing for the unanimous court, and Sandra Day O'Connor didn't vote because her husband was a Rotarian. You have to make some choices there. Justice Powell, writing the opinion, argued that many of Rotary's activities, including their meetings, are conducted in the presence of strangers. And because women members would not prevent the club from carrying out its purposes, there was no violation of associational rights. Furthermore, he said, and this is the paragraph on which everything hung. Furthermore, he said, even if there were a slight encroachment on the rights of Rotarians to associate, that minimal infringement would be justified since it serves the state's compelling interest in ending sexual discrimination, gender discrimination. And there it was. And the decision was now incumbent on all USA clubs. And of course, it took 2 years before it went to council. However, that day, that decision came on. It was announced on the East Coast in the morning. And I was driving to school. Remember, we're on the West Coast and we're 3 hours later. I was driving to school when the news came over the radio, listening to the radio in the car. And I couldn't believe it because it only took 4 months for the Supreme Court to deal with that. And I heard it, and I am looking around, I'm wondering, does anybody else know what this means? I'm looking at the other drivers. By the time I arrived at school, some 20 minutes later, I think all the media in the world were on my doorstep. So all the kids wondered, oh, these cameras, what's going on here at school? And of course, our superintendent, who was really sharp, said, you guys need to leave school and come up to the district office. We can't do this at school. So I shut down my office and we went to the boardroom at the district office. Mary Lou Elliott, who was the very first woman who walked into a Rotary Club, and we were interviewed by newscaster Warren Oldney, who now interviews for NPR. He was interviewing for CBS. And I was asked a lot of questions, to which I gave studied, I thought, and intelligent answers. They were addressed to me because I was the incoming president, and this was a huge thing for Rotary. But near the end of the interview, we were there for maybe 3 or 4 hours. In fact, we were already on our feet. I was asked how I got selected to be president. You don't ask Rotarians that question because they give you this dumb answer. In a careless and decidedly unstudied moment, I said, oh, I don't know. I must have missed the meeting. I have lived to regret that answer. That evening, the story was the top of the news, meaning it was the first item on the news, including my inane and embarrassing response. 4 hours of copy, and what they played was, oh, I don't know. I must have missed the meeting. Oh, come on. People around watching saying, for 11 years, this is what we waited for? Well, I started to learn then of the capriciousness of the media, and I knew that I was going to have to adopt a more serious mode. Notice I didn't get much more serious, a little more. So back at the club, we had to move our meeting place because we couldn't accommodate the press and the visitors who were ever so curious. We had people from South America, from Germany, from Korea, who had to come to see this little club that had done this big thing. I learned how to be circumscribed in any and all answers that I would give about this case. This was also my year as incoming president, and I had to settle into the goals we had set, which included Polio Plus, while the whole world was watching. We had some interesting telephone calls, including one that asked if the food were any better now that there were women in Rotary. I explained that we weren't cooking. Some were decidedly less pleasant. I also got one that asked, now that you have a woman in Rotary, are you going to have blacks in Rotary? And I said, hey, we did kill that bird with two birds with one stone. Some were decidedly less pleasant. We didn't get a welcome back from Rotary International, but we did get a new dues schedule, which meant we knew, they knew, we knew. Okay. And of course, in 1989, following an impassioned plea by Frank Devlin, who recently died, to the Council of Legislation, they voted to accept women members into Rotary. Now, this was 1989, and it was not until April 2004, 15 years later, that the Rotarian printed several articles about women in Rotary. They just pouted in a corner. 2004. And then they sent a photographer out to interview me, and I was the centerfold. But I was in a black turtleneck, fully covered. You know, Rotary has removed, finally, the last vestiges of sexist language, so that now they profit most, who serve the best. And even more new, a club may not be chartered unless its membership is open to both men and women. Now, the key word is open, because you don't have to have women into charter, but your membership has to be open. There are still two clubs that I know of, one in New Jersey and one, I think, in Georgia, and near Stone Mountain, where there are no women, and they say they can't find any capable women. So we're planning to take a group down there to see if we will be considered capable. Well, this didn't start as a women's issue, but as a simple attempt to recruit more members into Rotary. How successful has that been? Can men and women work together in Rotary? They have, for more than 30 years. And that was the beginning of my journey through this humanitarian organization that is Rotary. The realization of the opportunity to serve in an ever-shrinking world, the opportunity to meet men and women who can see and articulate a need and its solution, no matter how difficult the way or how meager the resources. Our President Matriarch said, women serve alongside men in every segment of life, in education, in medicine, in warehouses, and in construction. Why not in Rotary? So I was in an incredibly fortunate place when this all happened, because it has brought such bounty into my life. And of course, I've served my district in many positions, including a district governor position. And I've had the pleasure of talking to countless clubs here and overseas who are all fascinated by this story. In fact, my first makeup internationally was in the Rotary Club of Clapham in London, where Queen Elizabeth and I was the only woman. Queen Elizabeth and I were toasted on the same glass of champagne. Well, toast Queen Elizabeth and Sylvia. My small club went on to sink water wells in Jos, Nigeria, establish an AIDS clinic in Jamaica, support an orphanage in Mexico, and on and on and on. I participated in NIDS campaign, and there's very little that compares with the feeling that through Rotary, you may have saved the life of that child into whose mouth you placed those inoculating drops, and contributed to the eradication of a dread disease. All of these activities were done with the help of the Rotary Foundation, which provides the backbone of the humanitarian work we do. And I give to the foundation because it maximizes money given by individuals and others, and allows me to serve the creative efforts of all who believe in service above self. I stretch what I can, because that is what you do. So in India, I have met a lot of people who are interested in service above self, and I live out my grandmother's example. She'd never heard the word service above self, but the example that she set me in her caring, thoughtful way shaped my life. Our core value is service above self. The year I was district governor, our goal was peace through service. And I do believe that until we meet the needs of people for food, clothing, shelter, clean water and healthcare, education, decent environment, and all the basics, there's no place in which they can receive and absorb and respect the concept of peace. So my project during my year as governor was education for girls in India, and I support that school, and I try to go every year to do some training for teachers. Deepa Willingham started that school that now you guys should look it up sometime. Go to paceuniversal.com and look up Piale Learning Center and see the immense work that Deepa has done and how successful that school has been. But I realize over the years that my community is not just the residential area in which I live, or the town that supports it, or even the state that governs it. We are citizens of the world, where every action, however remote or seemingly far removed, has a ripple effect on us and on all others. Listen to the news from around the world and look at the effect it has on us. To the extent that they are well, we are well. And I think of Martin Luther King's reminder to us to ask ourselves each day, what have we done to help someone today? To whom much is given, much is expected. So, we wear our Rotary pins as ID pins. And can anyone notice in your pin tell that it says Rotary International? And if they can, do they know what Rotary is? I fly a lot, mostly on airplanes. Well, I used to fly a lot, mostly on airplanes. And a good way to attract someone's attention is to drop your pin on the floor in front of you. Well, do you ever try to pick up anything off the floor in front of you on the plane? Almost impossible. But if somebody in the seat next to you would make a good Rotarian, he will also help you to get your pin. In the process, he will say, what are you trying to get? Oh, my Rotary pin. Rotary, what is Rotary? And there's your chance to explain to him. You have a little brochure that says what is Rotary, or you have an elevator speech. If you don't have that elevator speech, write it tonight, right after you take off your Rotary pin and put it on your pajamas. Explain to that person who's sleeping next to you how important you think Rotary is. That's why you're putting it on your pajamas. And the next day, around the water cooler or the coffee machine, I bet they will laugh about the wearing of the pin, and they'll explain, that's her Rotary pin. And somebody will say, Rotary? What's Rotary? There you go. Opening up another area. The bottom line is a few more people will have heard about Rotary and may be attracted to membership. So I'm a Rotarian who, with other Rotarians in this ever-shrinking world, will work to make it a happier place, cleaner, more self-sustaining, and more peaceful than it was when we came into it. I will support the fact that Rotary functions on the edge of tomorrow, a tomorrow into which we can catapult aimlessly or carefully negotiate entry into. I love to work with young people, young scholars, in all the programs we've had. And just as the time was right in the 70s for women to be included in service clubs, it's right now for us to focus on young people, new generations, with all their energy and zeal, fine men and women of character, who in service above self will know that they profit most, who serve the best, and will wholeheartedly engage Rotary and change lives. Thank you for listening. Be happy to answer any questions you have. There's been a chat box. Oh, somebody couldn't hear.
Oh, she came back on. She was
Okay.
going to come back on. Let me see. Okay. One of the things that there is that was added to this, that there is a club east of us that don't have any women in it. Is that down in Wilmington?
No.
No.
I'm not certain. It's in District 7720, so it's not
Okay.
Wilmington,
Not
but it's
Wilmington.
someplace east of us. I can find out if people are interested.
Yep. Yes. There was one down in Wilmington that didn't have a woman, but when I left Wilmington, they were trying to find the perfect woman to put in there.
The perfect woman.
Yes, the
They look for
perfect
the
woman.
perfect men.
Pardon me?
Do they look for perfect men?
No, no, no. The Rotary was looking for the woman. Sylvia, you would have been great to go in there with these men. Yeah. So I absolutely love listening to you, and I could see the faces of the people, and they were so amazed. And we will take some questions. I've got some coming in. I've got mostly
How many
just,
of the
okay.
women were in ex-Rotary Club in the 80s? When we
Yes.
were there were probably about maybe 7, 8 of us in
Okay.
the 80s. And I always tell people, this goes with the next question, look over your classification list. It's a good place to start when you're looking for members of your club. Look over the Rotary classification list and see how many of those people you can find to invite to join Rotary. Someone also asked me, did it cost us a lot of money to defend our case or the president? It is process our case, and no, it did not. Sanford took our case pro bono. The ACLU assisted with him, so did the Seattle 5 Club. Rotary paid to defend it. We did not pay anything to press it.
I don't, well, Mark said it was wonderful. It is wonderful to listen to you. I was wondering what you feel about being in a club back then that didn't respect women and didn't want them in. You moved in, but I, with that history, Rotary must have suffered with membership.
Yes, yeah, there were clubs. There were clubs up in Vancouver, British Columbia, place where when women were invited, some men dropped out.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember the guy in Vancouver telling us 14 men dropped out and we replaced them with 4 women. They did all the work. But of course, my club was different because they wanted women in the club.
Yeah. But what about trying to get women at that time? Would they say, oh, I don't want to belong to Rotary after this big mess that had to go through the Supreme Court?
No, I never heard anybody who said that. I
Okay.
think most women realized that it was a win-win situation,
Mm-hmm.
and that the Supreme Court had made a ruling, and hey, it was a good time for them
Yes.
to join Rotary. Hey, we do a lot of things when the Supreme Court says we have to do it.
Yes, yes. Rose, I see you're not muted. Do you have a question?
No, I
No?
just wanted to commend Dr. Whitlock for kicking down that door.
You know, we just kept on doing what we always did, and we let the Supreme Court and the lawyers argue out the stuff, and we even, you know what? We were there to do Rotary stuff, and whether we did it under the aegis of Rotary International or we did it on our own, we were just going to do it. So, and that's what we did.
Susan had a question, wants to know how you feel about the direction with eClub. Passports are both virtual and in person when we reach that
Point.
Well, you know, that would not have been a really interesting question 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, God, with Zoom, I mean, I have a friend who works for an IT company, and as she said, what we're seeing now is a place where the physical is merged with the digital. The physical is merged with the digital, and sometimes we can hardly tell the difference. And there are things coming out like AR glasses and VR glasses where you see through your glasses people that are not there. But I mean, it's an amazing thing. And so I think there's a lot of room for e-clubs and places like that where you can meet, because they have projects. They still have projects. Even though they're meeting in e-clubs, they have projects that they support. And each person in this community can have a project that's assisted by other people in the e-club. So it's just another way. We're in another world, and we just do things a different way. Who could tell? We're talking, here I am now talking to you without getting on an airplane and flying there to see you. I mean, I talk to clubs in India, I talk to clubs in Korea, I talk to clubs in South America, and I'm sitting right here in my bedroom. My bedroom is behind me. You see my blinds behind me?
Yes.
I'm sitting right here. So it's possible for us to plan things without, so e-clubs are okay.
We have a question from two people that are alike, Carol Frey and Veronica Bent. They want to know about, can you give us some idea of how to help Black men and women to feel comfortable in mostly white clubs?
You know what's interesting? That I used to travel a lot and talk to clubs, and I talked to a lot of clubs in the South. And most of the clubs in the South are more integrated than the clubs in the North. There's more diversity in those clubs. And how can you help them to feel comfortable? By making sure, number one, people complain about things that are done that make Black people angry, that annoy them. I think that's more important to do than it is to ignore them. When you don't even see them, that's the big problem. When you see them and you react, we can change the reaction. When you don't react, that's the problem. So just make sure they have jobs that are equivalent to what everybody else has, that they do the same things, that you don't make a difference when you begin to assign or talk to them. So, and ask them to tell you about their experiences. I could tell you, I have another whole talk, I could tell you about some of my experiences, and we have problems too. So someday I'll tell you about it.
Yes, well, you could come back anytime. Veronica's question, was it equally difficult to have people of color join Rotary? I suppose that was when you were joining as a woman. Did you get a lot of pushback joining as a Black?
Chris, if I could expound a little bit. Hi, Sylvia. Thank you so much for your talk. Yeah. My question really is, how much was it that not that you were just a woman, but a Black woman? How much of that really played into it is really what I want to know. Was it equally?
I don't think they ever knew I was a Black woman.
Okay.
Really. It was just woman was the issue. And that's why when we had that question, when that questioner said, now that you have women in Rotary, you're going to have Blacks in Rotary. I said, no, we're a Black woman. So, but I don't think that was the issue. And of course, I remember talking with Ron Burton, who was an RI president, and he was probably the first person to invite Black people in Oklahoma to join Rotary. And he asked me to talk to the International Assembly about diversity. His diversity really had to do with women and men, but we talked about Blacks in all kinds of colors, the rainbow colors. Yeah. So.
Everybody has something to give, and Rotary is there to take it, to move us forward. So we need everybody.
And everyone has someone they hate. I have had students from all over the world, some of them through Rotary and some of them not through Rotary because I belong to UN Association. And I mean, we have a student from Turkey who hated the people from somewhere else, and we had a student from Switzerland who hated the people from Turkey, and everyone loves to hate somebody else. It's in our DNA. It's in human DNA. So we need to be aware of it. We need to think about it. And if we don't process it, why are we complaining about other people who don't process it? We don't process it either. And we need to do that.
That's what we're working with this club, trying to get that out and talk about it. And I appreciate, Sylvia, you saying that. Thank you. Oops.
Thank you for the certificate of appreciation.
I'll actually email it to you, Sylvia, so you can print it should you want to.
Okay. Put it in my stack.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, Sylvia.
Here, and I have another one I have to do. So, yes. Veronica, hang in there. Hey.
Absolutely.
Quick question. I didn't get a chance. I guess it didn't come through. This is Doris Wallace. I said that I'm from California. And I would love for you to come and speak with our E-Club. Because I had an interesting when I went to Redondo Beach Rotary Club. It was quite interesting because I booked it online. When I showed up, they were quite shocked.
Uh,
So how do we get in touch with you?
Sylvia 5.